Welcome to the Work is Weird Now podcast. Whether you're nearing retirement, entering the workforce for the first time, or caught somewhere in the confusing muddle in the middle, you're likely sensing it and you're probably living it. We know we are, and we want to know why. Listen in as we interview experts and everyday people like you to find out how best to navigate the ever-growing weirdness of work in the modern age. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Work is Weird Now podcast. Today we have Becky Glover with us. She is a multi-award-winning finance and technology professional operating at board level, and she's known for combining commercial insight, strategic leadership, and a deep passion for innovation and technology. So welcome, Becky.
Thank you very much.
Becky, you're joining us not just for this conversation, but also as part of our Work is Weird Now Finance Forum series, which kicks off with this episode. And you'll be speaking at the Finance Forum in London on October 7th of this year. And so we want to get right into the core question with you, which is why is now such a critical moment to be asking, is the future of finance human?
Such a big question. I think anyone in the finance world, whether that be working in industry or working within practice, will know just how much tech is coming in. It's picked up momentum, definitely, but the last 3 to 5 years has been this huge shift in how finance professionals use technology and just in their day-to-day work and how they're seeing their clients using that as well. And obviously it can bring so many benefits, but a lot of those benefits talk about efficiencies and how it reduces human error. But actually what we still need to think about is the topic I'll be talking about in October, which is building that high performance team, and just a wider thought about what does that do for the sort of human side of the finance function, how it makes people feel. And we all get really excited, right? A little magpie effect of new bit of technology, but you kind of have to stop and think sometimes that we are just all humans, and that's what a business is at the end of the day. It's just a group of people coming together to drive forward towards the same goal. So if we lose that sense of what it is to be a team, be a business, by just plugging a load of tech in, then I think we've maybe got a bigger issue here. Personally, I love technology. It's just such an amazing thing to have in your business, especially as finance professionals. I'm excited about it because I think how fantastic that there can be something there that does the things that you don't enjoy or does the things that you're just not really that interested in. So I view technology very much as trying to make yourself more human. So a lot of what finance professionals do is storytelling. And it's, yes, we've got a number over here and we've got a number over there. That's very black and white. But actually what the best finance professionals do is they take those numbers and then they say, and this is why it's happened. And this is how we can do more of that or less of that. And these are maybe the people that we need with the skills to really lean into that side. And if we did do that, then this is where the numbers could, get to, and that's how it would reflect. So the storytelling piece in finance is really crucial because you're not just working with other finance people. You need to translate this data to non-finance professionals. So putting technology into a business so that it can, automate that little bit, or maybe if you don't really like the graphic side of it, that can do all of that. And it can allow then you as an individual to lean into what you're really good at. So I feel quite optimistic about it because that's how I view technology. However, I do think that's because I am of a level within a business, so I can make those decisions. And I can say, well, I don't really like doing that, so let's get a bit of tech in to do it. Maybe if you're a little bit more junior, or if you're just starting out in your career and you actually don't know what you like doing or not doing at the moment, that could really, really be daunting for you because there's a lot of people making decisions that's really going to change the way that your career goes. So I was quite fortunate that I had the chance to find out what I liked, and now I'm having the chance to implement things that help me out. Whereas if you're maybe of a different generation, different age, different level of seniority in the business, you wouldn't have that. So I'm very mindful that I'm excited about tech and very positive about it, but that's because of my situation as an individual.
I've got a really good storytelling example. There's so much to unpack there, by the way. There's so many points to talk to, but I want to go back to the storytelling piece. So, Alice and I are from brand marketing and comms as backgrounds, and I've worked with in-house business unit leadership teams to translate some of those drier topics. So one of them was margin erosion, right? And just watch people's face go totally blank. And the commercial director at the time was like, we need to turn this into something much more compelling. And he translated it into the language of his son at the time, who used Fortnite as the example.
Okay.
And there was creative wrapped all around that to really uplift what is a real need to talk about margin erosion as being a real key topic for the business next year. A perception of finance is, the bean counters, like the number counters, and it's just quite dry, glaze over. But actually, how can you flip it to turn it into something that is understanding on everybody's level? Then you were saying about, you've obviously had the opportunity to work through the levels, through junior roles yourself and experience firsthand how to do stuff, but also what the things that you do and don't like. Whereas now, junior roles are being threatened with AI, etc. But I was looking at some stats ahead of this episode, and there's a Gartner study that we'll pop the link in the show notes. It says that 75% of finance teams of their budgets go on in-house people and 11% on tech. And that was from 2024. So it wasn't too old. Do you see that shifting now personally?
Yeah, definitely. And there's another great study, a report that's out at the moment. So the World Economic Forum, Future of Jobs. So they release this report all the time, but the 2025 report obviously is the most interesting. And they look at it and they say, right, so 2025 to 2030, where are jobs going? And actually accounting and finance is one of their top 10 decreasing roles. So it is daunting, especially for, as you said, for people that are more junior and doing more of the transactional roles. I think that's always the stuff that technology can be really good at quite quickly. Yeah, I think that would be really daunting if I was in that role. And then to see that report and to have it in black and white and think, gosh, 5 years isn't a long time. We're only looking at 2030 here. So what do I need to do so that in 5 years' time I still have a job and I, can actually get up and think, yeah, I'm doing something really great today. We need to make people comfortable in their roles, but also how we continue to keep them comfortable as this tech piece goes faster and faster and faster and faster. The rate of change is just amazing. You kind of refresh your LinkedIn feed or whatever and everything's changed again and there's a new bit of tech and everyone's using this and it's really easy to feel left behind, and that's a horrible place to be. On one hand, you're saying tech is really great, but on the flip side, we really need to care for these people that perhaps have a negative view on what tech is going to do in their roles.
Mm-hmm. I mean, just more broadly on some of those generational differences, you've spoken before about how was it your father who was also in finance profession as accountant? Yeah. And then you obviously, and then there's a different generation coming in now. How have you seen the changing perceptions of finance and the finance roles across those generations play out?
Yeah, so as you rightly said, my father was an accountant and that's how I got into the industry. But we talk now and my day-to-day and his day-to-day, he's retired now, but his day-to-day are black and white. So completely different. And also the demands of the finance function are really different. So he was allowed to really sort of specialize in finance and that was his thing, and his idea of diving into the numbers and looking at all the detail was really exciting for him. For me, yes, there's finance, but a lot of finance people also pick up tech or, IT generally, or HR, legal, people now picking up ESG as well. So the role is so broad. And so, yeah, we kind of compare notes, and what I sort of have as my outputs on a day-to-day and, regular monthly basis are very different to his. There's still obviously the underlying themes of finance there, but yeah, so different. And equally, I trained in audit and I look at the people doing audit now and I think that is a completely different job to what I was doing literally, 10 years ago. So yes, I think we're going to get to a point where every 10 years is different instead of, the usual sort of every 25 generational years. It's just amazing. And, I am mainly in finance and in that bubble. So I don't know if that's normal now, for other areas, marketing, for example, if there is that sort of pace of change. But yes, certainly in finance, it's really fast.
If we've got one more question on that, because the only constant now that we have got is change. And that same company, we did a perceptions video of what the enabling departments in a business were. So we did what's perceptions of marketing. It was like colouring in, HR, the cry on your shoulder department, finance, the money counters, right? And it was very tongue in cheek. So I wanted to, and that was only 8 years ago, right? So I'd love to know because of this rate of change, what is the perception of finance do you feel now? But also, like you say, the routes into finance vary so much. So if there is somebody out there who's thinking, I do want to get into finance, but I don't actually know what the right route is for me, what access routes are there?
Yeah, two really great questions there. So I think the perception of what the finance function does now, I think it's changed, but I know there's still a big portion of people that still think of finance as these kind of bean counters, the number crunchers, which couldn't be further from the truth. Really, we're kind of like the strategic co-pilot now. So we are like the right-hand person for the CEO, because obviously we've got all of that technical knowledge on the finances, but we see everything. So, we're seeing that sales director going to New York, and we see what taxis he's taken, or where he's taken people for dinner. So you get like a really broad view over the whole business. So then when a CEO comes to us and says, what's your view on this? Where do you think it's going? We are perfectly positioned to say, actually, I think we can do more with this client, or, the marketing funnel here looks really great. And got that kind of data and analytic brain as well to be able to do that. So that's where I think the function is right now. But I do still think there are a lot of CEOs out there that go, no, you should just be doing the numbers and the sort of historical numbers where we've been, whereas we're really good at looking at, that's where we've been, but I think therefore this is where we're going. So that's that. And then the routes into finance, I just think are brilliant now. So when I left school, I didn't have the conventional route into accountancy at that time. So I left school at 17. So I didn't have A levels, I didn't have a degree. And I had to kind of fight my way into an apprenticeship, which at the time meant you got paid very little. They were few and far between. I did night school for a little bit, and it was all a kind of horrendous work that no one else wanted to do, because everyone said, well, you need to have a degree. That's the route into, this sort of chartered profession. But now it's incredible the amount of people I see doing apprenticeships, and even some of the real big firms are saying, yeah, okay, we'll take school leavers. Whereas just a few years ago, their grad schemes were just that. They were for grads, and they were for really high performing individuals, very academic, had been to the right universities, had done the right courses, presented themselves in a certain way. And obviously that gives you quite a small pool of thought, of diversity a lot of the time. So now that we're seeing the apprenticeship route really pick up speed and get really popular, I think actually the profession is only going to be better for it. So I'm on the board of a organisation called AAT, which is the Association of Accounting Technicians. So we do loads with social mobility in that organisation. Also, I see CFOs who aren't accountants. They are maybe management consultants, or maybe they've got an MBA, or maybe they've just got an amazing track record of building businesses. So there's now this acceptance that, yes, there was this very linear progression previously of what an accountant looked like and how they went through their training route. But now I think it's, are you adding value to a business? Can you add value to a business? And if you can, well, that's great. Then we want you. Obviously, there needs to be a certain level of understanding of finance, and that goes without saying, but it's a lot more flexible now.
Yeah, that's honestly a joy to hear, because apprenticeships back then, even I had a perception of them only 3 months ago, that it was an alternative. In our time, it was just so under the radar, and almost if you didn't get into uni as an option. But look at where you are,
At your finance forum speaking engagement, you will be looking at how to build high-performing teams. We've talked about the generational aspects. I'm assuming there are some frictions that naturally occur across generations within teams. What are some other things that you need to be looking out for as you build a high-performing finance team? And where do those friction points exist, and where are the opportunities right now?
Absolutely. And I think the generational point is a really interesting one to look at, and something I don't think we look at enough. So, you go into an organization and they might personality test you, and they might give you a color or the range of letters to understand what you're like and if you would then fit into a team. But what we tend to miss is, like, how did you grow up? Like, what was your background? Because, for example, you would not drop my father into the same finance team as you're dropping me into. And if you did, there would have to be sort of really clear roles and responsibilities, because his strengths are very different to my strengths. So I think instead of now having this kind of, ladder progression route where, you do all of the grunt work at the beginning, and then you've got a few more years under your belt, so now you can step up, and that's how the high performing team sort of builds itself, just by number of years of being there. I think now we're looking at it in a case of, you're an individual, what are your strengths, and do we need that within our team? So, as I say, the qualifications are extremely important, but it's more about, like, but what can you bring, the value add that you're bringing to that organization? Especially now, we're in a slightly trickier time with our economy. So I think it needs to be a bigger question over, where is this business going? What's the team look like right now? And does that work? Full stop. And then, okay, so if we're then going to this next level, what should the team look like for that? And you see it, people moving around organizations much faster now. You get to 2 years and then someone wants to move on, and the younger generations do it even quicker. They want the experience. They don't want to sit around wasting time, in their opinion, gathering no new knowledge. And that's, fine, great. If that's what makes them happy, then we need to lean into that, and we need to accept it, that if you're hiring someone that's of a younger generation, either they're not going to be there for 10 years, if you're not giving them that exposure. But what they will give you when they're there is amazing. It's a different viewpoint. It's, actually, can you implement this tech? Because you seem to be really good at that. So previously it was whoever's the most senior, which was likely to be the one that was the oldest person in the team. They make the decisions about what's coming in. They make the decisions about what's being implemented. Whereas now we're going to flip it on our heads and say, okay, well, maybe you're not the best person to make the final call on that. Maybe this younger person who really loves tech and has grown up with it, and they are sort of this tech native, maybe they need to do all the demos, and they need to try and, break it and see what happens. And they should go through the implementation, obviously with the sort of handhold of someone more senior that's seen it and done it, a few more times. But yeah, I think we're just taking now what are people good at, generationally, but individually, and that's how we're going to build the team. It's no longer about how long you've been here for or been working for. It's literally, what value are you adding to this organization?
I mean, this suggests two things to me. One is that we as individuals need to have a much better sense of what we're good at. So we need to be much better advocates for our own skills. We've talked about this quite a lot across various different episodes of the podcast, is that we're now at a time where it's no longer acceptable to ensure or to assume that your CV tells the story about who you are. And actually, you need to have a better, broader understanding of what you bring to the table. But equally, from a recruitment standpoint in the finance profession, are you seeing quite a lot of evolution in terms of how people are being brought into teams? Because that kind of, here's where I worked before kind of model isn't as useful of as a source of information as it was once.
Yeah, I think now what we're trying to do is go, okay, who is this person? Like, what is their core? Like, what do they actually enjoy? And I think that comes across, yes, in a CV, but also on a, social media point. Have you got a LinkedIn? What are you talking about on LinkedIn? And
terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. Other social platforms as well. You can just Google someone's name and it all comes up. But I think it goes also to the individual allowing themselves to be bold enough and go, well, thanks for explaining that job to me in the day-to-day role. That's actually not what I really enjoy or what I'm really good at and what I'm hoping to lean into. So this one isn't for me. And I think certainly for the more junior roles, I would not have had the sort of confidence to say, this isn't for me, I'm going to back out. It was all about, the power of the employer saying, well, do we want you actually? So I think that's quite a shift of, it has to be this two-way street. Yes, that individual's going to come and work for you, and maybe there's a salary, maybe there's flexible working, but what else is there? Because the individual wants to know now, like, what is the balance between work and life? And if the child's off ill, can they just go and quickly pick them up, or is that actually frowned upon? So it's much more of a two-way street now. I'm not sure the very beginning part of the recruitment has changed enough. It is still CV, cover letter that goes into a system. Most of the time it's a tech system that will scan for, certain words or phrases. And then it's an automated no or yes. But I think then moving through that, if you can get through that stage, then you can allow your personality, individual and organizational, to shine and see if that's actually a good fit. So yeah, I think there's a little bit more work to do.
And do you feel like the finance profession, broadly speaking, is becoming more accepting of things like neurodiversity? Is it evolving in line with how we're seeing the workforce change?
Definitely. And I'm really excited about that, because when I hear people talking, they are quite open. They'll say, I've got autism, and people go, oh, brilliant. Because now people understand what individual roles are so deeply, and then they're understanding what individuals, if they're ADHD or autistic, whatever it is, what that actually means. There's a lot more awareness about it. So they can go, okay, I think actually you and your personality and your strengths will be great for this role. You've got that, you've got that sort of superpower. And actually, I think this is really going to level you up in that role and allow you to use that to its best ability, instead of going, okay, well, let's try and force you into this role that you're probably going to hate. You're going to have a hard time battling with day in, day out, but that's just what we need you to do. So yeah, I think it's great. I think I hear people talking about it all the time as this superpower. And they're really keen to match up roles to individual superpower. Again, going back to that value piece, you're going to add so much value to this organization and the team, because you're actually going to be happy at work. And that, is just, you can't buy that. It's happiness and sort of community team feel.
So in the few times that I have delved into the world of finance over the years, when my clients have been finance adjacent, I know digital transformation has been a thing in finance for a number of years, and I know you've been very much at the forefront of that. In your view, what do companies get right about digital transformation, and what are you concerned about as we move into a time of even greater change around digital?
Yeah, so I think the things that they get right, a lot of the automation tools are fantastic. They're really easy to implement and see the kind of positive side quite quickly. I think we've still got a bit of a job to do as business leaders to allow individuals to play and have time to figure stuff out for themselves. So I think a lot of business leaders still are thinking, right, well, that's that individual there, they do this job and then they go home. That's the value they create. Actually, how I think people should view it is, yes, that's their job, and maybe, they do that as an equivalent of 4 days a week, for example, but that extra day, that fifth day in the week, I actually want my people to go out and be really curious and go, what is the next best thing? What are you really good at? What are you passionate about? Like, delve into that, go down the rabbit holes, see what you can find, see how you can upskill yourself. bring it back, then teach the team, because if you've got a great team of different people with different interests, naturally everyone's going to go off in slightly different directions and slightly different rabbit holes. But then if you can come back and then teach that to a team of people and say, do you know what, I found this really cool company, they're doing XYZ. The sort of internal innovation that creates, I think, is amazing. But I don't think business leaders are doing that enough at the moment. I guess it's scary, right? You've got to have a level of trust for that individual, not just to sit at home and, watch the next Netflix drama or something. But I think the point of coming back together and saying, what have you figured out? What have you learned? That's the kind of proof of the pudding. So yeah, I think I would like to see more business leaders doing that.
Alice and I are so passionate about this. We've done topics specifically on curiosity, creativity, because of the rate of change, because of the dynamics of all teams now, like marketing teams, like finance teams. We've got golden threads between all of them. And I think the way the world is now, like, we have to be curious because we can't stand still. We've got to be creative but share that learning. Don't be afraid to test it, trial it, break it. We're not like, it's just, we've got to give these things a go and then share those learnings from some failures, but also there'll be successes in there. And we're so passionate about that on this podcast.
I think it's challenging though, because, and I would imagine this is particularly true in finance, where the drivers are so often speed and efficiency, right? So often we talk about digital transformation in those terms, and actually we don't often leave space for where's that discussion around the human impact of digital transformation, and how can we leverage technology to create the space for people to go off and do things like you're describing.
Definitely. So I think it comes back to, you've got to start with why, because anyone can go off and find an organization with a good bit of tech and bring it in, spend some money, it's done. But I think if we go back to why and asking ourselves, why do we want to transform our function with tech in the first place? What are we actually going to do? What are we going to automate if the automation is the thing, and why? So again, always coming back to this thing of, but why? It's the age old thing, isn't it? If you ask why 5 times, you get back to the true reason of what you're doing. And I think in all of those questions of why, it's because we're wanting to add more value to the organization. We're understanding that a finance team can be so much more than churning out the reporting for the historical numbers. And we're looking at how can our individuals in that team be seen as individuals and not just seen as someone that churns out some work. And to do that, we need to understand, well, what are they good at? And does that align with the organization's, ultimate aims, what they're shooting for? So I think if people can just take a minute and go off on their own and then come back and do a bit of a workshopping situation on those whys. And as I say, try and ask the why 5 times to get back to the real meaning. Then what you do end up implementing with technology transformation, it's tech, it's brilliant, but actually it means you're going to get to wherever that organization wants to get to faster. You're going to have the right people in the right places doing the right things, and they're all going to be happy. So you will have better retention, but also for the time that they are in that organization, they're going to pull together, they're going to be seen as a team. And I think it's quite a relatively new thing in humans as general, that we all do a bit of everything. It used to be the fact that everyone was like a specialist, and there was that one person that was great at medicine, and there was that one person that was great at looking after the kids or whatever it was. Now we're expected to be so many things to so many different people. If you say to someone, what are you good at? Great, let's lean into that. All of a sudden you get this real high performing individual that then come together in a high performing team. It's just transformative to that business. And the tech you lean on and allow that person to do what they're great at. So yeah, that's why I love it so much.
How is the profession looking from the standpoint of stress and overwhelm at the moment? Is there an issue? Is that something that needs to also be addressed?
Yeah, I think there's always has been an issue with stress and burnout within the finance function. But I think at the moment it's particularly bad because, as I touched on before, there's that feeling, and I know this isn't just finance, but there's that feeling of everything's changing really fast and everyone knows so much more than I know. Actually, what people aren't doing is being honest and saying, that's what's online, that's for whatever. But as an individual, this is what I'm doing. And it always comes back to, what do people do when you're not watching? When I'm not being watched, when I'm not talking about stuff, I'm playing with things, So I do get ahead with various bits of tech because I'm just allowing myself the time to sit here and go, that didn't work. That wasn't very good. So let's move on to something else. So I'm allowing myself the sort of space to fail, if you like, if that using that word, it's not really failing, it's playing, isn't it? When you're at school and you're learning, when you're little, you play, and that's how you figure out what works and what doesn't work. Then weirdly, you go into, the world of work and it's all called, well, you failed on that project. Well, maybe I just played with it and it didn't quite work,
Mhm.
It's all in that sort of space that I don't think people are allowed to have from business leaders, or maybe allowing themselves to have. And that is what causes, as well as obviously not sort of driving into your passion and your purpose areas, that's what's causing everyone the kind of stress and burnout, which, I mean, I think it probably goes across all areas of business at the moment. I think we need to get back to a point where we all feel a bit more free in our work.
Yeah.
Instead of just jumping from, this fire over here, this fire over here. And I think it comes back to allowing teams and allowing yourself to be open and honest and just be completely I'm not enjoying this. Does anyone else like this? Or can we get a bit of tech to do? Do we even need to do this? Let's ask all of the questions. But there are so many people, I think, because we're living in this world of we must all seem happy and perfect and lovely all of the time because of social media. There's almost now this disconnect of being able just to be really honest and human and go, this isn't working for me right now, or I don't enjoy this, or this role isn't right for me. This organization's moving in a different way now, and that's not really for me anymore. That sort of safe space and that freeing of just saying, I'm just going to be honest because that's how I feel. And that's, life is so short. Let's not sort of force ourselves to have this wonderful, happy smile on all the time because of social media. So yeah, I try and be really radically honest with everyone around me, in the hope that that gives people confidence to do the same to me. So yeah, I think if we can just all just be a little bit more transparent and talk a bit more about, work and what's going on. And I think also if you're open and honest, you go, do you know what? I've got a to-do list as long as my arm, I'm not getting through it. Can anyone help me? Or is there any tool out there to help me? Whereas, yeah, some people go, nope, that's fine. I'll push through. It's all going to be great. I'm the one that does it all. So yeah, I think we just need to free ourselves of those expectations now.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Absolutely.
I'm fine. And there is a great book as well, which has come up in other topics, Radical Candor, about having those honest chats, which I think everybody should have in their lives. So there we are.
So if you had a chance to rip up the finance playbook and design the function from scratch, what would it look like?
Yeah, I love that. So I would get rid of the job titles, and change them completely to match the individual and their value that they bring to the organization. So,
Love
there's
that.
standard titles, isn't there? And if someone has a title of finance manager, for example, you can kind of guess what they're doing. But what I would like to do is go, right, yeah, there's a finance team loosely because we're working the numbers that are good for that business. But actually, what we're going to do is we're going to say, what is the gap in that area? We're going to go out and recruit for that. And then we're going to see what job title matches that individual. And then if that individual was to leave a few years down the line, we then reassess. We go, okay, cool. What gaps have we got in the team? Let's go out and find that person. And then that job title might be something completely different, but it just reflects that individual and where that business is at that time. So I wouldn't be able to say I'm ripping up all the job titles and this is what they should be, because I think it would match the people and the organization. And then I think it gives greater emphasis for that person to allow themselves to, sell themselves to the next organization on what they have achieved and who they are as an individual, instead of just going, yeah, I was finance manager here for 2 years and then I was financial controller here for 5 years, and people kind of guessing then and getting an idea of what they've achieved in those areas. Instead, you go, I was this crazy title, whatever it might be. And then someone goes, oh, so what does that actually mean? Like, it opens up that conversation of what did you actually achieve there and what were your sort of best bits?
What is the biggest outdated practice or mindset in finance that you would happily burn to the ground / throw away?
I think the fact that some people still say, well, you must have a degree to work in finance. And you go, no, you don't. There are some brilliant apprenticeships out there. There are, MBAs that you can do after something that's not a degree. You can use that learning to then go and do an MBA, and you can just learn from your workplace. You don't need something super structured. I mean, I'm a massive advocate of the apprenticeship route. I think it's amazing to work and earn at the same time and have this sort of structure there still. But yeah, so many, and I see jobs still that say must have a degree, and you just think, but why? Like, what is your reasoning behind that? So yeah, that's what I would get rid of for that sort of traditional viewpoint.
So we talked about a couple of these things already: storytelling, trying out new technologies and that sort of thing. But once the machines come and they take away all of our need for thought work, easily automated tasks, where do you see space for creativity, flexibility, humanity in a role that people often think of as quite rigid?
Yeah, so the storytelling is obviously huge, but I also think communication. So finance leaders, they're working with so many different people in an organization. It might be marketing, it might be the CEO, it might be sales, like whoever it is, people in manufacturing, there are very, very different people, and you need to change up how you're talking to them and what are those people interested in. If you're talking to someone in manufacturing, for example, they probably don't care about the individual journal for that one FRS standard or whatever. So you have to constantly change up what you're talking about and how you're saying it. So communication for me would be like top skill, which I think is the most human thing, right? Understanding an individual, where they're coming from, being able to listen, because I think so many people think of communication as talking, but understanding someone and, being able to listen to them and what their needs are is super important. So I think if people can lean into that sort of communication side and obviously have a great understanding of the finance and the tech and whatever, but if they have the communication side, that makes them like a really high performing individual in finance.
Smiling so much because it's just music to our ears. Both Alice and I working in comms in both of our roles, and we're like, hallelujah, here we go. It's just a joy to hear people say that, and that, comms needs to be at the forefront, right? It's just so often overlooked.
Yeah. So finally, ahead of your session at the Finance Forum in London, what is the one thing that you hope leaders in the room on that day will take away about building teams and about the future of finance?
Yeah, I hope they leave that session and they feel quite empowered and confident to do things differently. So as we said, like whether that be how they're recruiting people, the job titles they're giving them, how they structure the weeks within that business and saying, I trust you, go off, learn what you want to learn, just bring it back to the organization. And having the confidence and the power, because they're obviously all going to be, senior leaders in their fields, having the power to go, yeah, we're gonna do things differently, because I really believe that that's what's going to move the dial for the organization, but more importantly for those individuals as well, because as I always come back to, if you've got high performing individuals, your organization is going to be high performing as well, because that's all it's about.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This has been a really interesting chat. Obviously, people can find you at the Finance Forum, finance-forum.com. You can sign up, get tickets, and go and hear Becky deliver this spectacular speaking engagement. How else can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I've got a website, beckyglover.co.uk, Substack, Instagram. I'm pretty much everywhere. So yeah, just come and find me. I'm very friendly, love to communicate. So drop me a message. Let's go for a coffee. Let's do whatever. But yeah, let's be human and let's connect. And let's just, make a community out of it.